Michel is an experienced professional with a passion for ensuring safety in the workplace. He started his career with WorkSafeNB in 2015 as an investigation officer, where he quickly made a name for himself as a diligent and thorough investigator. Michel has been the manager of the investigation team since 2021, where he is responsible for overseeing investigations in serious workplace incidents, catastrophic events, and all prosecutions. Before joining WorkSafeNB, Michel had a successful career in policing, where he gained valuable experience in investigating crimes and enforcing the law. This background has given him a unique perspective on workplace safety and has helped him develop a keen eye for detail and an unwavering commitment to ensure all workplace incidents are thoroughly investigated. Michel is known for his professionalism, his attention to detail, and his ability to work well under pressure. He is dedicated to his work and ensuring that all workers are safe on the job. His expertise and experience makes him a valuable asset to the WorkSafeNB team, and he is widely respected by his colleagues and peers. Welcome, Michel.
Good morning, everyone. I don't know if I need the mic or not, or should. Okay. So I guess I'm in debt to whoever wrote that. It was good. So yes, I will be talking about anchors, but I'll take a few minutes to talk about something else. This year we've had 4 fatalities thus far, 3 of them involving heavy equipment. We had a loader backing up that crushed a worker between that loader and another loader. We had an excavator backing up over an employee. And just last week, we had another fatality involving a tractor and the backhoe on that tractor. All 3 of these could have been easily avoided if we're just looking at pedestrian safety and awareness around heavy equipment. For some reason, we haven't had these fatalities or these accidents in a long time. I don't remember the last one we had prior to this year. But 75% this year could have been avoided just with being safe around heavy equipment. Not part of my presentation. I don't think it needs a presentation. So when you go back out there, just talk to your people, right? Be careful around heavy equipment. Make eye contact. Make sure that everybody knows where they are. The mirrors are functional. The backup cameras are working. Very, very simple steps to follow to keep people safe. So, yeah, I just wanted to state.
And there will be some resources coming forth from WorkSafe very soon.
So we have communications working on a package that's going to go out, talk about safety, reinforce it. We're going to have social media blitz, talk about safety.
My sister association in Manitoba just gave WorkSafe to go ahead and use some of the materials from Manitoba Construction, and they got it all within 2 hours. That's the joy of having sister associations, right?
That's what Eric was saying. Yeah, literally from 11:30 and 1 o'clock, it was all received and being modified and worked on. Anchors. The reason we wanted to talk about anchors is we've had a lot of accidents over the last few years, including a fatality where anchors were the cause. And it's not well known. Basically, when we have a collapse, we can almost predict ahead of time where to go. Look at the anchor, not properly installed. People don't have it working. They've never read the manufacturer specification, and they're not being used appropriately, right? So that's why we wanted to have just a quick presentation on anchors.
Working for you?
Other one?
Yeah.
There we go.
So the first one we're going to talk about is the expansion anchors. What we're seeing when we're going out and doing investigations, everybody says, why are you talking to me about safety about anchors? You basically drill a hole, drop it in, and it works. What training should we have on this, right? And that's just to explain the expansion anchors, how they're built. The important part is the expansion clip, to make sure that that gets to fully expand when it's in the concrete. And the picture I'll show you on the next one is, we had an accident, it was a new construction, it was ICF, and what happened is they never accounted for the thickness of the foam when installing the anchors. So they took the thickness of the foam as part of concrete, and in fact, it just acted as a lever when weight was put on them. Yeah, I guess I'll go to. So they used pucks. So what basically happened is at the design stage, it was determined that, and wrongly so, that the ICF couldn't be cut for the shelf to be installed directly on the concrete. So they decided at the pour, they would cut 4-inch holes, put a plywood in front, and they called them pucks. So they were just concrete sticking out so that they could attach the shelf using the anchors. But that is not part of the concrete itself, right? It basically acts as a lever for pressure. Actually, it helped pull it out of the wall. But they didn't know. They just assumed, you know what, if we go 24 inches and we put 4-inch holes and we just put the concrete, then the L steel shelf will be on the concrete and we're okay. The issue is that there's a fire issue. The foam would not have prevented the fire from jumping floors, and in fact, it was acting as a lever more than anything else. That was the initial design on the project drawing. It showed the L-shaped steel being installed directly on the concrete, but midway through, the architect wanted a different design, so they never accounted for the thickness of that, what turned out to be concrete, and they still used the same anchors to install the shelf. So we see here the thickness of the ICF, and on the right we see anchor embedment depth with the steel shelf. And we had 3 3/4 inch, but almost 2 inches of that, or 1 3/4 inch, was only foam. So the anchor could not be embedded completely in the concrete. So when installing anchors, they always come with the manufacturer's specification. And that's the first thing we look at whenever there's an accident or we're involved. Where are the manufacturer's specifications? The person who installed them, are they aware of the specification, right? How deep was the hole, and was a torque wrench used to install anchors? If you go to any of these manufacturer specifications, they will give you indication that a torque wrench has to be used. What we're seeing a lot is, it was how tight did you put it until we couldn't go anymore, right? We use an impact until we couldn't anymore. We use a wrench until we couldn't anymore. And we're seeing floor collapses all over the place based on improperly installed these. That's the visual of the pucks that I mentioned, the 4 inches that were protruding out of the ICF, and that was not adequate at this point. When anchors have to be used, and they talk about a thickness or the embedment, it's really from the wall. If anything is used to, I guess, create a puck like this or just create a spacer, it's not considered part of the concrete, and the thickness doesn't count for what is required in the manufacturer's specification. One easy way, I know we all have different roles, but one easy way to see if they're properly installed when we're going on project sites or we're doing an investigation is, if the anchors are all the same length and they're all being installed the same way and the holes are all the same depth, well, what we're seeing should all be identical. But we're walking around and we're seeing some of them have a 1/4 inch, some of them have a 3/4 inch, some of them are 1 inch. So if you're walking around any project site and you're looking at any of these anchors and there's inconsistency, some of them are not properly installed, right? You don't need huge engineering consultation. By simply looking at them, if they're not all consistent, they're wrong. So we don't need a manufacturer specification. But we should get you the manufacturer specification and asking the questions. Who installed this? And if you look at the manufacturer specification, they're actually going to mention the drill bit that has to be used, and then there's actually an ANSI standard based on what drill bit you need to use, plus all the PPE required. If you're drilling into concrete and you're blowing it out with just your mouth, well then you're exposing yourself to silica dust, right? So there are PPEs required when doing this, there are tools required to make sure they're doing it safely. And these are two different project sites, the one that failed and this one here. And any floor collapse we've had, I could have brought in pictures, and that's how the anchors are installed. There's inconsistencies throughout. The other one is the drop-in anchors, and this one here actually led to a fatality, and we have a coroner's inquest coming up on that one in February. Same thing. When we did the investigation, every single person I spoke to, and this is right after fatality, I was asking questions about anchors, who installed anchors, and I literally got told by half the people I talked to, why are you wasting your time with anchors, Mike? We drill a hole, we drop it in, and it's done. Even after someone had died, because people just don't have the understanding of how anchors should be installed. It's not one of these things that you can just drill a hole, blow it out, and drop it in. We attach equipment to it, the support floors. They will eventually lead to some of our employees getting injured. This is just one of the examples. Hilti, if you open up the drop-in anchors, that's the manufacturer specification that you get. They're fairly easy to follow. You have on there, even the torque wrench is mentioned. They've made it fairly easy just to follow the pictures. Whenever you have anchors, make sure that whoever installs you reads the manufacturer specs or looks at the manufacturer specs. In this case, the pictures, right? I'd say, show of hand, how many people look at these before installing anchors? Yeah, some do. But it's one of these things that's been taken for granted for years, right? It's a simple task. That's actually one that was seized from that fatality. So what happened is they were installing the anchors. Concrete had not been tested, so when you're going concrete, it typically takes 28 days. You want to wait for it to cure, or at least you got to get it tested to make sure that it meets the requirements. If not, if it's an old structure, you got to make sure that the concrete is tested to make sure that it's sturdy enough to drill a hole and put in the anchor. In this case here, they were drilling holes, and the comment we were getting is the depth varied depending on if they hit rebar or not. If they could go deep enough, they would go deep enough. If they couldn't, they stopped wherever they could, and they would compensate with washers. This is an accident. It's not made up. We took from the scene, right? It pulled the anchor right out of the wall, and the washers only acted as a lever to pull the anchor out of the wall. Other anchors we saw, one had failed at the lower part of it. So they just moved about 3 inches and drilled another hole and installed another anchor. Depending on the manufacturer specification, you're going to have clear guidelines. It could be 6 inches, could be 9 inches, could be 12, depending on the manufacturer specification. And we look at this one, it's still not installed properly, because you can see that it's not flush to the wall, right? It's sticking out. This was one that was anchored to the ceiling, and you can see threads on the eye bolt, so that one is not installed properly. I think that's one is self-explanatory. And that was being used, right, for rigging components. And what happened is it failed because none of the components were rated properly, and the anchor in the wall wasn't used properly because it was being pulled onto at an angle, and the manufacturer spec says you can't pull on them at an angle. So 6,000 pounds of pressure was being put on an eye bolt, at a 45-degree angle, and naturally it failed. This one has started to fail, but had, right? It's bent, You can see the threads, and you can see the drop in the anchor is probably halfway in. Because the rebar couldn't go any further, they wanted it right there, so they just installed it and kept on working. I don't know how to explain this one. But again, we see in the background, there's another anchor, an idle. The anchor was probably installed right, but the accessory to it wasn't. And that one in the, it's not in concrete, so it's, however that was supposed to support something. So those are just a few pictures to say, and I know I'm going through this quickly and I'll be open to questions, but anchors are extremely important when it comes to safety, right? We're either attaching something that's a component of rigging, which if it lets go, puts us in the line of fire, which can be extremely dangerous, or it's holding up something that's critical, part of the structure. And all it takes is making sure that we have the right drill bit with concrete bit, right? That the depth is right, and that we are torquing it properly when we're installing, not just using an impact and saying, well, we got to the end of it, we can't make it any tighter, so it's probably installed properly. There are ultimately the reason we think they're being used as they are is they are simple, and anyone can use them. Unfortunately, it is not being used properly. So you are going around and looking at new project sites, looking at these anchors. If it looks out of place, it is. It shouldn't. You shouldn't be dropping anchors. You shouldn't be seeing them at all. Anchors should be consistent when you're going, looking at a floor, for example, from underneath. They should all be coming out at the same depth. If it's a quarter inch or half an inch or whatever the case may be, they all have to be the same. If they're not, stop, ask questions. There's something wrong. Any questions? If at any point you have any questions, like you can reach out to me or any of our officers at WorkSafe. If you think it's an issue, it's a hazard, like we know these are very dangerous, so reach out to us. We'll have someone go out, do an inspection. If you